Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. I know that there's a couple people here, and it doesn't look like YouTube kicked them over, so hopefully they'll come over manually. I'll give everybody a second to be able to join in. Unfortunately, YouTube, it's supposed to kick everybody over, and it doesn't always work perfectly. Let me also just try to do our chat bot here, and I apologize for those who are watching after the fact. We will get into this pretty quickly once we get everything set up, and let me see if we've got anybody back in chat. Looks like YouTube is struggling pretty hard here as well, unfortunately. All right, well, today, guys, we are going to look at Seth Skorkowski's, his TTRPG reviews, his philosophy on this. I think this is going to be an interesting video. I know a little bit about Seth, not a lot. I don't watch a ton of his stuff, but what I have, I've really liked, and I think that we're going to agree on a lot of stuff over here. Hey, cool, Scott. All right, I was like, it didn't kick you over, man. I was like, oh no. I was like, concurrent viewers went to 0 and it stayed there. Okay, thanks for popping over. Excellent, and the chat bot's working, so that's great. So we're gonna do this also just to let you guys know on Thursday. A lot of people really liked the strength in TTRPG's video. It kind of blew up for the channel or whatever in a short period of time there, and then it's kind of gone almost to nothing now, but it blew up there for a little bit. We're going to be talking more about that, and I got a lot of comments, and the comments were pretty much everywhere, which I would expect somewhat from YouTube. So on Thursday we're going to be talking about that more. I've even looked into a few things that people were common threads where people feel like, farmers are stronger. And so that was like that seemed like a perfectly reasonable strength to some group of people. Anyways, we're going to go through it more. My hope, I'm also calling in a friend of mine who is part of my core group, and he's someone with very intelligent guy, and so I hope that he'll also have some insights and stuff for us. We'll talk about, kind of some of the comments and everything else, and then eventually we'll move into maybe some of the game design aspects of it, and just kind of some rough notes on ways you might deal with strengths in TTRPGs, because I think that is also part of the audience that was kind of interested, whether that's like homebrewing your own game at home, right? Like how to change it, how to modify it. I know a lot of people start with one system and they kind of make it their own, so that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So anyways, let's get in here and check out Seth's video here on TTRPG reviews.
Skorkowski, and today we're going to talk about tabletop RPG reviews. Now, this is a subject that I know pretty well. According to my RPG reviews playlist, I've made 175 review videos covering something like 110 different adventures and 19 different RPG systems over the last 8 years of my doing this channel. There are hundreds of different RPGs and game supplements and adventures out there. Most people don't have the time or the ability to read through them all to determine which ones they want to spend their money on and play. So
this is absolutely something that before I started covering games just in general, but TTRPGs more specifically, I thought I knew games. and I thought I knew the space pretty well. And then I learned, and maybe that was I don't know, maybe it was arrogance, the naivety of youth, I don't know, but I realized that, hey, this space is actually way larger than I thought or had any idea about. And going to conventions, going to some of the larger conventions, you just see that, oh my god, there's more games that come out in a year than I could possibly cover if you consider TTRPGs and board games and anything that tabletop related, war games, etc. And yeah, absolutely, it's a high quality problem that we have, but it absolutely is a problem. There's only so many games you can play in so much time, and so sorting through them, hopefully this will keep me in business for a long time to come.
like with most other purchases these days, we look to reviews to help us out with that decision. I lurk on several RPG forums, and every week or two someone starts a thread asking for recommendations on reviewers to follow or voicing their complaints about the overall quality of RPG reviews out there, and I almost never comment on these threads. It's almost impossible for me to come in and say something, say anything really without looking like I'm just trying to self-promote my channel or that maybe I'm attacking a different reviewer out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing about Discord, there's a handful of things, having done YouTube for a little bit now and having been in the space. A lot of people think, one, if you link a video in a Discord, that you're trying to, people always have like the no self promotion, which is totally fine or whatever. Linking a video in YouTube video in a Discord, people don't realize this, does nothing. no one will watch that. The only time linking, and I know this from digital channels, by the way. So for those who don't know, I have a digital channel, about 7,000, a little bit north of that, subscribers, and I cover games and do guides. So sometimes people will link my videos in other in discords and what have you. And I have done things where I have tested this out and left them unlisted so no one can find them unless you already have a link, and then drop them into discords, or people have dropped them into discords by guild leaders of various games that are saying, hey, can you put your videos in our discord? I would like people to watch them. You have good guides. Okay, so I have done that, and the number of views you get is like single digits in discords with hundreds or thousands of people in them. And a lot of people think that it's funny how many times, like, no, it's yeah, no self-promotion because it's annoying. No one wants you to go in there and just drop videos into their discord. I don't want to do that. No one wants to do that or whatever. But even if you do, it doesn't do anything. It really doesn't. You know, if you have a channel for it, it's even worse, because it's just like, yeah, that's the spam channel that I don't, you know, because most of the time it's bots posting them there. And a lot of people think that, you know, so I totally get what he's understanding. If he, you know, mentioned that he did videos, people would just be like, you're just there to self promote or whatever, and would absolutely dogpile it. And that's just, even if people are trying to do that, I see it every once in a while. It's pretty cringe when it does happen, but it doesn't do anything. And anybody who knows anything about YouTube knows that that's true. The only time it's really helpful is that in my own Discord, I have my own videos linked, because people come there to find them, and they want to be able to find them while they're talking to me, you know? And so that's like one of the few places where people will be like, oh, where's it at? And it's really a convenience thing for your audience, for the people that are already in the Discord, so that they don't have to go to YouTube and find it. And that's like literally it. And again, I have data on this. So that's at least my experience. Obviously, I'm one person, but I think it's pretty true. Yeah, Scott, you enjoy your reviews as well? Okay, cool. And can relate to the comment. Yeah, you know, if you don't know, guys, go into a large convention, Gen Con. It's absolutely amazing. It sells out. It's been selling out now that COVID's done in the past. Well, not that we don't still have to deal with it, but at least the epidemic portion of it is done. It's crazy how many games there are, and it's not even the largest, you know, when you consider like Spiel and other things like that.
There, you know, just killing the vibe of the whole discussion altogether. But I do have a few opinions about RPG reviews as far as what makes a good one, the different types of reviews out there, and, you know, my own review policy, which I've never explained in a single video before. I've explained it as just little parts on different videos, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about that all in one place finally. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're looking into an RPG product.
Part of my reason for looking at this video is because I did watch this part of the intro, and I was like, oh, awesome. And it can give me a chance to talk about my personal views, because I also have some of them. I think that by and large, I'm gonna agree a lot with Seth here. There are other YouTubers out there, some that I really like, and this is actually something I should make very clear. There are creators out there, some that I know personally, some that I don't, that I like, and we have differing views on some of this stuff. And I just want to make it very clear, guys, we can disagree. The internet's like the only place where it's like not okay to disagree with somebody and still be friends, okay? I disagree with my close friends. I disagree with my spouse. I disagree, you know, with with family, and we're still friends, okay? We can disagree, maybe even heatedly, and still be friends. The internet is like one of the few places where people just don't feel that way, and and so just realize that we can disagree on stuff. I don't like what certain other YouTubers, how they feel about stuff, how they feel about sponsorships and what have you, and have good reason for it. But again, we can still be friends, right?
There are a lot of questions that we might have. What is it? How hard is it to use? Is it helpful? Does it fit my table's taste? In the case of a physical product, what's the quality? Are the pages going to fall out of the...
Okay, what do we got? Okay, how hard is it to use? What's the quality? Are the pages going to fall out okay for physical things? What is it? Is it helpful? Does it fit our taste? Okay, I don't know who this is. I bet she's famous.
this thing? And ultimately, is this something I'd want to buy? While there are a lot of metrics that we could use to classify RPG reviews, I personally just put them into two main categories because they're the ones that really make the biggest difference to me. Reading reviews and playing reviews. Essentially,
Okay.
did they simply read the book or did they play the game?
Dude, these picks are great. Are these, did you just turn these black and white? Are these like, did you get these from somewhere? These are amazing. I like the black and white. Maybe he does this all the time. I don't, again, like I said, I've watched some of his videos, but I listen to them at the gym at like 1.5 speed as a professional YouTuber does, because you need to keep up with what everybody else is doing. So you got to do that. But yeah, that's really interesting. The reading versus playing. Yeah, absolutely.
And both types of these reviews have their uses. First is reading reviews. This is when the reviewer has read the adventure or the game and relates their thoughts
Oh,
based
okay.
off their experience and their expertise in other adventures or other games that they've played. The big advantage to them is that usually they have a much faster turnaround time. We'll usually see these first after a product releases, and they can answer many of the simple and initial questions that people might have about this particular product. Some of these reviews can be very thorough. Some reviewers might go through the whole process of building a character and testing out some of the mechanics, but most reviewers don't seem to go that far for these. The majority of reading reviewers just simply read it, hopefully read all of it, and then just pass their judgment.
I have absolutely seen this, and my personal take on reviews is when someone is giving you, so this is somebody's like work, and for some people this might be in the TTRPG space, this might be their life's work, okay? And they're saying, "Hey, here it is, review it." I take that pretty seriously. The last thing I would want to do is not, so I read through everything completely before I review it and then play as well. And realistically, I read through it, most of it, several times. I read through the whole thing at least once, but even then I'll reread through stuff, or I'll be checking stuff and I'll be like, "Oh, I missed this. I didn't catch this," or whatever. I need to make a note of that and what have you. And so that's what I typically do. There are creators that do not take this as seriously, and they will miss stuff, and they will give completely inaccurate information, or complain about something that isn't really an issue. And I mean, this is somebody's work. People have spent hours, days, weeks, months of their life to create this product. And I know that it's like, it's just games, like, don't take it so seriously or what have you, but for me, I do take it incredibly seriously, because this is, again, someone's life work, right? They spend all this time on it. And what am I going to not, if I give a bad review, and not bad as in negative, but like bad as in not accurate and not fully fleshed out, like, that to me seems criminal. No, it seems yeah, it's hard to say how bad I think that seems, but I don't ever want to do that. So I always want to, and it's not that someone couldn't do a really good job with just reading through something, but I think that there's things you're going to miss.
And while, yes, I personally do consult reading reviews before making a purchase, and there are some reviewers that I highly trust for their opinion and their thoroughness, by and large, these type of reviews are pretty low effort and prone to being incorrect.
Yeah.
I've read and watched
Yeah.
a good number of system or adventure critiques where it was glaringly obvious that the reviewer had not played whatever it was that they were reviewing.
And the tragedy here is, it's obvious to somebody who's played, but it's not obvious to someone who hasn't played. And that's where they get an incorrect idea of what a game or a system is like. Yeah.
Either they said things that simply just weren't true, or they failed to bring up huge problem areas that aren't as obvious when you're reading it, but really become major issues very quickly during the course of playing it. They tend to focus more on minor issues, little typos or little nitpicks that don't matter too much at all for the overall playability or enjoyability of the game, but they're pretty low-hanging fruit as far as, this is a mistake I found and I can critique it. And I've seen reviews that either praise something
Yeah.
as being the best thing ever, or they scorned it for just being unplayable crap, where the reviewer clearly had zero actual playtime with this game or this product, and they were completely wrong. And it really pissed me off because, people are being steered towards or away something based off this incorrect information that the reviewer was giving, which that my anger at those terrible reviews is what led to my own review policy being put into place.
Yeah, I would just agree with this. I think this is absolutely the case, and it feels really unfortunate. And I see this with board games, honestly, as well, and many, everything tabletop related. I feel like I've seen this, and people who it doesn't. I mean, again, there's so many games out there, right? They probably didn't have time, or they didn't want to spend the time, or what have you, because they're trying to get more reviews out and what have you, and they're giving low quality reviews. And it almost seems like some of them watch other reviewers as well, which I think you should absolutely do. But it seems like they just kind of say some of the same things, or maybe try to offer a twist or a few other things. Another thing, as an example of what you'll learn through play, Dragonbane's initiative system of handing out cards, on paper, I hate it. On paper, I'm like, no, I don't like this. I don't appreciate this at all. This seems terrible. In practice, it works really well. It actually works just fine, right? So if I would have just read it, I'd have been like, yeah, I don't like this, what have you. And then, in play, you're like, yeah, I love Dragonbane as well, Scott. Honestly, I think Dragonbane, and maybe I'm giving away a video, a future video, but I think Dragonbane is probably right now it's probably the thing I recommend the most to new players, for people thinking about getting into TTRPGs. Not that it's the best, because I haven't tried everything else out to know that it's the best, but right now I think for me, that's what I recommend to people, because I think it's so good. But if I wouldn't have played Dragonbane, actually play tested it, I wouldn't have known that. There's also other things. Like, I find the first encounter and starting out with Dragonbane, it's harsh. Man, that system can be incredibly harsh. And that's what it's aimed to do, or what have you. But having that experience, you can give a different idea of like, hey, here's the strengths, here's the weakness. And I know, because I've played this and I played it with a group of people, and oftentimes when I do these reviews, I play them with multiple groups of people, because different people have different opinions. And if I just play with my core group, then I might be in an echo chamber, or I might not get some other perspective, or those people are more familiar with certain systems. My core group, a lot of those people are, everybody but me has or almost, at least now, we've added a few people, we added somebody recently, but they all have advanced degrees in STEM fields. Okay. I'm by far the dumbest person at the table. They're going to have a different perspective than maybe just an average person, that I might play with, or what have you. So that is important for that. The dice mechanics are so smart. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Free League, just in general, they make incredibly great games. I've been very impressed. Even ones that I don't really enjoy personally, like some of their what is it called? Like the Mythic Britannia in Ireland or whatever. I don't like horror. I'm just not that into it. And so, they have some things that are geared towards that. And, yeah, One Ring Blade Runner. Yeah, but I'm actually thinking of the one with Vossen. It's Vossen. I was like, the one with the Vossen. Oh, it's called Vossen. I'm an idiot. Vossen is one where I'm like, I played it. I didn't do a review on it because it's just not my style. And I even I even got a friend who's Swiss to, or not Swiss, Swedish to play it for us, actually GM for us and what have you. And it was just like, yeah, this is not my style or what have you. But again, yeah, going through and actually playing it, you learn things that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. Yeah, too much like COC. Okay, yeah.
Which brings us to the second main category of RPG.
Oh, sorry, that's Call of Cthulhu, for all those not hit to the jive, unless I'm missing something. I think that's Call of Cthulhu. There's enough games. There's probably 2 COCs.
Reviews, playing reviews.
Dude, these images are amazing. I love this. This is high quality stuff here.
But first, a word from our sponsor, Cognitive. Right now, data brokers are collecting your information.
I'm going to skip
video.
Ads by, like, never mind. We won't talk about
playing reviews. These are when the critic has actually played the game or the adventure being reviewed. And being the fact that most of the times the reviewer is also a game master, they're the ones that most likely ran that adventure or supplement. This first-hand experience means that they've actually seen the product in action, and those less obvious details that might escape a reader have revealed themselves during the course of play.
There's so many things. There are where the game is confusing. I found that I've learned a lot about how to make a TTRPG from reviewing them, and from having experiences where players are like, where is this in the book? I can't find it. Dragonbane actually has this problem where they put things in 2 different locations. Most TTRPG books do, or a lot of them, 50%, maybe more. And it's like, I kind of have a slowly running list of best practices that I want to put out there in a video in the not too distant future for those who are designing TTRPGs, because I think there are some things that are just simply best practices. And yeah, you absolutely run into those whenever you're actually playing and what have you. Issues that players have, interesting mechanics, right? Whenever they're coming up with stuff and they're like, oh, how do these two things interact? Where are the problems here? And you can kind of dive into it and realize, like, is this a problem with the book not explaining it? Is it a problem with layout? Is it a problem with the game system? And what is it?
Least common types of RPG reviews, and they're the types of reviews that I do on this channel. Because they require the critic to gather a group of players together and to actually play the dang thing, sometimes require multiple sessions in order to do it, these type of reviews can be extremely slow. So it might take weeks or
Yeah.
months after a game or adventure is released before this review can even begin to release. Often missing this window of, new product hype that might be around a new release. So, most often when people are going to be checking reviews right after something releases, you are not going to be getting any playing reviews out of that. When the topic of read versus played RPG reviews comes up, a popular sentiment is how an experienced game master doesn't need.
My personal take on that is or not take on it, but my personal approach to this is like, I'll get it eventually. I'm much more concerned with getting it right and it taking however long it takes. I know that that is a problem. Because again, like you said, that first push, that's when everybody's Googling something and seeing, hey, is it good, is it bad, or what have you. But you know, I guess I value being, correct. I guess correct because some of it's opinion based, but I value having an accurate opinion, at least my own opinion, so much that I would just rather take a long time.
To play the game. They can draw on their expertise to formulate an accurate review, and that sounds great, doesn't it? And this is something that I've most often heard from different RPG reviewers out there that only read the game before they review it. But
I wonder who he's talking. I'm sure he's correctly not saying who this is, but I am really curious who does this because I bet there's several people who have said this exact thing, and I don't know any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are.
call bullshit on this because I've got 33 years worth of experience playing RPGs, and while, yeah, I can make a pretty educated assessment how an adventure or a game might probably play, I've also been terribly wrong off that initial assessment before.
I think there could also be a bit of the, was it Dunning-Kruger effect? Am I thinking the right effect? Where those who don't know that much because they don't know the mass of knowledge that they're unaware of, they think they know everything there is to know. And I could definitely see this being an issue for a lot of people who just get into games. You see it with recently with everybody and their dog making a TTRPG where you know everybody feels like they know everything and you're like, guys. And then at some point, you learn more and you realize how big, the space is, like Scott, like we were talking about earlier, where like, oh, I realized how many games there are out there and how I thought I knew about the games industry, TTRPG or even, board games and what have you. And then I realized, oh my God, there's more games that come out in 1 year than I could possibly play. And so you're like, okay, yeah, this space is bigger than I thought. And I could see someone thinking that they knew a lot, but not realizing what all there was to know and kind of unintentionally tricking themselves into thinking they know more than they did. And I'm sure that, the people that do this, it's not like they're poorly intentioned, at least, by and large. But I can also see this being a problem where you just learn, it's just different. And so I definitely think the distinction between just reading and actually playing is very important. I know nothing about the industry. I only know games I enjoy. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'm sorry, I was just talking about like the just the sheer volume, not about the industry as a whole, but just the sheer volume of games, right? Like, and what we see, what I used to see, I used to think, oh, this is a lot, and then I'm like, I found out, oh, this game's been around for 15 years and I've never heard of it. It actually looks pretty cool. I should try it. That sort of thing.
For. And not just in problem areas that I didn't see when I was reading it, but also hidden gems that play much better than they read. For example, my favorite example of this was 7th edition Call of Cthulhu's chase rules. They read really weird, and I thought they looked goofy as hell, but we tried them out and ended up being the best chase scene that we have ever played before. I've now ported these rules over into other games, but had I just simply written them off after reading them the first time, I'd have missed out on one of my very favorite RPG mechanics out there. Other games, well, the rules read great.
Yeah, that would be similar, I would feel like, to that Dragonbane issue with the initiative system. I feel like it could be the exact same thing, where on paper I didn't like it, but in practice it's actually really cool. And there are other things as well. I guess I should give it a little bit of thought. One of the things I really liked how elegant in Start Here the mechanics are, but in practice I find especially with new players, where every attack roll there's also a roll to resist the damage. I found that to be very cumbersome, especially for new players and for the style of game I felt like it was like. So while I liked the system, I liked a lot of things about the system, I didn't actually like how that played, and that was a bit unexpected. And I'm sure there's a plethora of other things.
Great, when you're sitting around on the couch, they're extremely difficult to use and reference during the course of play. What I refer to as a couch read versus a table read. And one complaint that I've made about many games and adventures is they read out a lot better than they play. One thing that I've noticed with how critical or thoroughly someone believes that they read an RPG book, kind of like a thought experiment, that is nothing compared to what reading it's like before you gotta run that thing tomorrow for your buddies, and you want to make sure that you've got everything down because you want to make sure that you have a good time. So it's not just the act of running the game that changes how you analyze something, but that starts from the instant you've committed to yourself to the fact that, yeah, you are definitely going to be running this thing, and you look at it a whole lot differently. And
That's like, yeah, I can totally see this. I think it's much like reading a math or a physics textbook, or maybe even a chemistry textbook, depending on what you're doing, and then actually having to solve problems based on what you just read. Those are two totally different things. And again, I think it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you can read it and you can be like, oh yeah, I read this, I learned it, and then like, okay, cool, now solve this problem, and you're like, okay, oh wait, no, I don't understand this. I don't know actually how to solve this problem. But it's unintentional, but you can very easily trick yourself into thinking you understand and know something better than you actually do.
I don't care how much expertise or experience somebody believes that they have, a true assessment requires that you put it to the test. I expect my movie reviewers to have seen the movie, my car reviewers to have driven the car, and my RPG reviewers to have played the game. But as I said, the cost for these types of reviews can be that they take a long time to appear after a product is initially released. Customers have to weigh, do they want it thoroughly or do they want it fast? And they cannot have both. But there's also other considerations.
My goal is to do this, to have it thorough and fast. And fast being probably still slower than you could just do a like quote unquote reading review, but that is my goal for the future. I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to eventually. It'll take probably over a year, if not longer, to get there. I usually don't use published adventures. I homebrew nearly exclusively. Yeah, I mean, as you might imagine, I do the same thing, Scott. And I borrow things from published adventures. My experience with published adventures, and I need to check out what is some of the newer stuff that's come out, is that most of them have not really improved in the past 30 years. Like, we're still doing things much the same way that we did it beforehand. I mean, I thought the Dragonbane adventures, excellent. Excellent. S tier, it's amazing. It's one of the best parts about Dragonbane. Very easy to run. Love everything about it. It respects your time. It gives you, a handful of adventures and kind of gives you the synopsis in like a page or less, or paragraph or something. I don't remember, but it's a very short period of time. The whole like, oh, read the whole thing before you start it, and you're like, what? That's insane. Why am I paying for this if I have to read the whole thing? So yeah, 100%, man. I don't mind borrowing things, but it's interesting that I don't think there's a lot of money in it. I know that there was perceived to not be a lot of money in it from Wizards of the Coast historically, them being the biggest one in the space, and a lot of other companies just it being hard to make that profitable at various adventures and what have you. And I think that has changed somewhat in recent history. Like, they figured out ways, other companies like Beetle and Grimm's, where they offer like very high quality products for your table that have to do specifically with the adventure. There's other ways of making money, basically. And so I feel like there's been a little bit of a resurgence, but I don't know that a lot of writers, I don't know how many people are making a living specifically writing TTRPG adventures. I would guess not very many. And so they're getting writers who do other things that might be very talented writers, but the first time you do something, you're not going to be that great at it. It's definitely a skill you'll have to learn. Not to criticize the word, I'm not writing TTRP adventures, but it is one area that, man, we could use a lot of improvement on. It's a huge area for improvement.
To make when you're looking at an RPG review, such as what are the reviewer's tastes? Like with most entertainment.
Dude, these are amazing. I must have just mostly watched or listened to his videos because like this is, I mean, we got the Space Marine over here. This is 10 out of 10. Hey, Lyriel, how's it going? Oh, well, thanks for dropping in to say hello. And yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation. Yeah, thanks for dropping in.
Critiques, what's fun and intuitive is completely subjective. An RPG reviewer who prefers cozy RPGs like tea time adventures probably isn't going to have the best recommendations for the nihilistic horrors of Delta Green and vice versa. So it's a good idea to find reviewers who have the same tastes as yourself or have experience in the same types of games that you're interested in looking into and learning about. For example, my personal tastes lean towards skill-based games, investigation, horror, criminal, set in the modern-ish era through all the way through sci-fi. So I tend to talk about Cyberpunk, Call of Cthulhu, Traveler, and Cult Divinity Lost. I also have a huge weakness for pulp adventures, so I'm probably not the best person to go to if you're wanting the opinions on the latest 5e D&D or Pathfinder release, unless your tastes coincide with my own, because we're going to be viewing those through the same lens.
I'm going to disagree with him a little bit here. I certainly appreciate his point. I feel like to a large degree, what I try to do, because we all have biases, right? Like we always have things that we are biased towards or against or what have you. Like I said, I don't like horror, right? So I'm probably not going to review many horrors, many or like horror themed products or what have you. Sure. But even things that I don't like as much, if I'm still very open to them and I'm still interested in them, even if it's not my specific thing, right? Like my wife loves cute little creatures. And so if we play a TTRPG that has a bunch of cute little creatures in it, or we're playing as cute little creatures, she's probably going to love it. That's not necessarily my main kick, but I can still enjoy it. I think the most important thing though is that what I always try to do at least is tell people where my biases lie, what kind of games that I like. And I think that is in reviewers that I've watched, not necessarily just with TTRPGs, but with almost anything, knowing what they like and where their biases are helps inform me, and I can still get a good review. I can still get a lot of value out of a review, which is what I mean by good. I can still get a lot of value out of a review by someone who doesn't like a product and who mentions that, hey, I don't like this type of thing. I think it's interesting, but it just wasn't for me. And if they talk about it and say intelligent things about it, then I can go, oh, this sounds perfect for me. Like if they're like, oh, it's too crunchy. Oh, well, I love crunch. Like that's probably going to be great for me. Like tell me more about the crunch. And so I personally, again, I really like Seth or whatever. I just happen to disagree with him on this particular fact. I think he could review more things if he wanted to, and it would still provide a lot of value if he just, hey, this is the, like he just did. Hey, these are the things I like, this is where my happy space is and what have you. And maybe you can't do that with everything. Like I said, horror, I've just never really got into it. So if I were to talk about a lot of horror stuff, I wouldn't even have a baseline to a large degree. Now, I've been in TTRPGs for a while, and I have used fear type mechanics and what have you, similar to some of what you might find in Call of Cthulhu, what have you. So sure, I might know a little bit, but honestly, I would feel from my own perspective, like I could be like, oh, I thought this is a really cool mechanic. And someone who's a horror fan would be like, yeah, idiot, that's in every horror TTRPG. Why do you not know that? I could see that happening for sure. And so, I might do something like that in the future. One of the things that Free League has done with their Alien, right? That's the most crunchy system, or rules that they've come out with yet. And it's kind of horror themed, right? So I still want to give that a try because I have liked pretty much everything I've played from them. And so I still want to, play that. I might even want to review it or what have you, but I will give a lot of caveats like, hey, I'm a noob. So I'm fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you tell me I'm an idiot and I missed, a basic rule or what have you. It's going to be fine, but at least telling people up front. Same. Okay. I wish he would review more and different stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have found that there are a lot of people that review just a little bit, and maybe they get sent something and they'll review it, and as opposed to someone who like reviews products as a core part. I don't know where Seth falls in this. I it kind of what he was talking about earlier, the number of things he's reviewed, it kind of sounds like he reviews things that he's interested in, and that's kind of where he lies. And so it kind of feels like, you know, more auxiliary to his shit. Not that he hasn't done a bunch of reviews, but more auxiliary. It seems like some of the things he's reviewed, it's not like he's reviewing a bunch of systems. He's reviewing a lot of different products within a particular system that he might particularly like. And so I think it's a little bit more narrow in focus as opposed to, I guess, what I try to do, which is like more of a broad, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into some of the systems, and I've tried that a little bit, but right now it just doesn't make sense for me. I like some cyberpunk, and that's about it. Okay.
So when you're reading or watching a review of something that you're interested in and they're saying how it's a must buy or maybe it's the worst thing ever, it's a good idea to check out some of the critics' other reviews to determine what their personal tastes are, because if you do find a critic that shares the same tastes as you and they give solid reviews for games, you should definitely follow that critic. Next,
I just think that's going to be really hard, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be really hard to find someone who has the exact taste you do in TTRPGs because there's not that many of us, and I don't think it's an incredibly profitable business in general. And so I think that's going to be a hard ask. But I mean, that would be great. That would be like the perfect, you do want that Venn diagram, but I think it's a hard ask a little bit.
is money. I hate to shatter some dreams as to what RPG reviewers make, but it is not that much.
Yeah.
As far as hobby goes, this is still a pretty niche market.
Hey, GDS, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining. We're just taking a look, man, at review philosophy here from Seth Skorkowski. So just doing a little reaction, man.
Reviewers, they also got to eat and possibly pay for a crippling RPG addiction. I can stop anytime, I swear. YouTube and blog view numbers don't make as much money as most people out there imagine. So how do we get paid? Well, many publishers will send out review copies in exchange for reviews. They want to get their names out there, and reviewers need stuff to talk about, so it's pretty win-win. And it's like this for every industry, from games, electronics, makeup.
This is a little bit weird. This is in the. We'll see where he's going.
You name it. However, this is where things start getting a little bit tricky and the question of bias and promotion starts coming into play. A reviewer should disclose if they received a review copy or not. And not just should, but legally required to in most places. But that should also come with the provision that a review copy does not mean that it's going to be a favorable review or even receive a review at all.
So I just want to say about this. This is something I've heard come up before, and I don't understand this argument at all, and maybe it's just because I come from a different perspective. If you are somebody, so games, the value of a product given to me is $0. Okay, I have so many products, I have so many games to review. If that's digital or tabletop, I have so many that the marginal increase of getting another, I can't play the games I have. I have, embarrassingly enough, I have games that are. I've maybe one I recently took out of the wrapper. It was in the wrapper for guys for like years. And it was like, cool, I want to play this game, and I just haven't gotten to it. The idea that a lot of people think this, like that somehow reviewers are getting like bribed or what have you. The way that companies will try to influence how someone reviews a product is by sending them promotional products. And so you can see this, this has happened particularly with WotC and not too distant history, where they try to send you unique and interesting stuff. And they'll also send you something like teasing an announcement or a product that they're going to be bringing or what have you. And they'll send YouTubers and reviewers cool, interesting things that they made 20 of, and they send them all to the reviewers. That is about the only thing as far as like getting free product that you could argue might, if you sent someone, and I'm just making this up, guys, but if you sent someone a diorama that was like 2 feet by 2 feet of the original cover of Dungeons and Dragons, but done in exquisite detail and, molded in brass or something, right? Like that is something where, okay, someone might be like, yeah, that's really cool to have. But even then, if you're like a big reviewer, how many things like that have you gotten? I don't think it's that I don't know. I don't know that it does. It could influence people if they're paying to fly you somewhere. Now that's a different story. And reviewers will always people will always say, "Oh no, it doesn't influence me. It doesn't influence me," and what have you. And I could see an argument where maybe that wouldn't influence some people. I personally, I have my friends know that I will tell them the truth. And so that's not always a good thing, okay? But it is a thing where if someone wants to know objectively, they want an honest opinion from a friend, they know they can ask me and I won't spare their feelings and I've gotten better about how I communicate things, right? But I still will be honest with someone because I value the honesty in the relationship more than because I think they can take what I have to say. And I'm going to try to word it in a nice way. So I have this reputation. So in some ways, I do think that, hey, maybe I could, this stuff, if I was given gifts or what have you. The thing is that it looks bad. And so a lot of this stuff, it looks bad, but I don't think like someone being given games and what have you, unless you don't review TTRPGs and someone gives you this cool product, maybe you're like, oh, a new shiny thing. But again, I cannot, the number of physical products I have is quite large. And the number of digital products I have is even larger. And the idea that one more game that I don't have time to play, that this is literally a job for me, would influence anything. The people think this with tech reviewers. Just to give you, I just want to make this point really clear, guys. And I don't feel like I'm doing it, so forgive me. But tech reviewers, okay, those who review computer components, this is something that I'm into. And a lot of people think, oh man, these reviewers, man, they just, they get all these free products. Man, after the 24th graphics card, like, what are you going to do with it? Right? Like, it doesn't, it's not really a value to them except for as a business product. And it's the exact same way with TTRPGs and with board games and what have you. I mean, some people might go and try to resell it, but no real legitimate business who plans on being in business long term does that to any measurable degree because it's bad business. They might need that product at a later for a review or to test it or run up, follow up on something or what have you. And if they get rid of it, what are they going to do? So I don't think that that's actually happening, nor do I think that this is something that anybody should be concerned. If someone is doing this as a business, you've got more, there's no value. You're not being given something of value. It might be perceived that way, but to the actual person reviewing, they're not giving you anything of value. It's a perspective that I could understand, but it's one that once you actually think about it and once you understand the situation, immediately you're like, okay, yeah, that's not actually a problem. With the like flying people out and doing other things like that, there are situations where like I have a friend and fellow YouTuber on the digital side who got flown out to Gen Con, actually. Oddly enough, it's for digital games because they had a digital game there. They had a digital product. And he probably couldn't have gone and wouldn't have gone if they wouldn't have flown him out. However, I don't know that that is really a benefit. He had to be away from his family, wasn't really excited about that. And, he had kids and what have you. And so there's some stuff where it's like, yeah, even though it really just depends. Now, with the whole WotC thing, right, after the OGL scandal, they flew a lot of people out. They were 100% trying to bribe all of those creators and not bribe them directly, but they were absolutely trying to wine and dine them and what have you to try to control the narrative. I think it's hard to tell, but companies want it that way, right? But I think, in general, I don't think this is as big of a concern as people make it out to be. If GDS Scott, if you guys have different opinions, though, please let me know. I'd love to hear a different opinion because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I'm not taking into account.
This is one thing that I learned as a novelist, as reviews from review copies that we sent out really came to about 25 to 30% that we actually got a review in return for the review copy.
And I think I have ran into this. There's a lot of companies that probably think that I'm not going to review their product. And it's not because I'm not going to review it. It's just because I haven't gotten there because I do want to take the time. I'm trying. I'm working, guys. I promise.
But it does come with the question of a free product favorably biases the critic towards the publisher. Hopefully not, but it is possible, and this is the reason that critics are supposed to disclose if they received a review copy or not.
The other part of this, why I don't like this, is because, and I disagree fairly strongly with him on this, is because as a small creator, right? And I'm sure he still falls in this category to a large degree, even though he's, you know, got to, hopefully he's doing well on YouTube, is because a small creator is just never not going to be able to review a product if they're not given it. And the idea that, you know, it would make it appear like, oh, there's some conflict of interest here, which is like, no, it's just I'm not going to be able to if you don't give me a copy of a product, I'm not going to be able to review it, pretty much across the board, unless I was already buying it for my own use. I'm just, and I've done that with products. I'll do one with Brotherwise, one of their products that I bought because I thought it filled a niche in my tabletop gaming board games. And so, yeah, I picked that one up and I'll probably review it. But again, it's the idea that like this is not going to influence anybody. There's not really anything of value, and creators are not going to be able to review the products with TTRPGs. One of the reasons I started with that is because I can get digital copies that cost the company nothing. It's a lot different, and it can actually be very difficult when you're talking about board games because there is a cost there. And some of the products that for example, I believe it's called like the Silver Ring. There's a product where it's kind of GM-less product. And last year at Gen Con, very small company, couple of guys, right, that made this product. And I was like, it's going to cost them something to give me this physical product. And so I was like, can you just sell it to me at cost? And that was a way, because I really wanted to cover it. But I also understand they don't have money to be giving away product or what have you, even though it's promotional. So yeah, I understand that. And that's how I did it with those guys. But I wouldn't even do that now just because I have more things to review and I just don't have time or money to do that. GDS says, I'm just taking it in here and listening to your perspective. What you're saying makes total sense. Maybe some people think they personally would be biased consciously or unconsciously in that case. Yeah, I guess that's fair. I would just, yeah. As someone who does it and I know you're just representing a point. I would just say as someone who does it, guys, and maybe I'm different, right? Maybe I'm built different or what have you, but there's no marginal benefit to playing another TTRPG system. And again, to Seth's point about when you actually play these, when you're talking about played reviews, I have to cajole, I have to trick, I have to bribe, I have to convince my friends and acquaintances to playtest games with me, and it's exhausting for them. And so I try to share the love and do it with different groups of people, and because it's exhausting to try to learn a new TTRPG while I make sure I've read the whole thing and hopefully understand most of it before I present it to them. But sometimes I'm like, hey, can you just read part of it or whatever, and tell me what you think, just so that I can get your unbiased opinion as if you had just bought it. That takes a lot of work on their part and a lot of effort. And I have great friends, and I'm lucky that I know a lot of gamers and a lot of people that'll do that. And so, yeah, that's great. But again, it's a business. There's no real value here for the creator in most of these situations.
This is different than paid reviews. I have never once charged a publisher or anyone else for a review, but I have been offered money many times to do sponsored review videos, and I've turned each and every single one of those down. I find it shady as hell of just making an infomercial under the guise that it's an RPG review. I just find the whole practice dishonest.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with him on the paid reviews. And while there might be some that do it better than others, some do it they really hide the fact that it's a paid review. And I, as someone who's in the industry, and I actually see this with other things that are not even in the tabletop gaming space, guys, but just other paid reviews where they hide it. And I, as a YouTuber, know that this is a paid review, but I don't think most people would, and they do that intentionally. And it's a very shady practice. I mean, we saw it with Mark Rober, right? He actually did a thing with like electric vehicle or self-driving vehicles or something where, it didn't really seem like it was a paid ad, but he's like, he's repeating their talking points and everything else. And it's like, yeah, this is a problem. If you don't know who he is, he's a pretty big YouTuber that covers a lot of like sciencey type stuff. Yeah, I know board games can be expensive to produce, especially for smaller scales. Yeah, and it can be hard to even get those products. Like there's a company that I would like to get some of their products for to review board games, and they so far they haven't been interested. I don't blame them, right? I'm a small creator or what have you, and so maybe they don't whatever reason. And there are also TTRPG companies that just stonewall, just won't say anything, won't not interested. They don't ever return my emails, and I know they've got them. I finally got to the point where like, yeah, we received your emails. And then that was it. I was like, okay, cool. I will stop asking. Thank you. You could, and part of it, it's a business, right, for me. And so I just wish sometimes they would just be like, yeah, we're not interested. But they don't want to offend somebody. And some YouTubers, I think some of us, right, we're just kind of doing things we don't, maybe some don't take it as much as a business, and they might take something like that personally, and they don't want to offend anybody. And again, I understand, but for myself personally, I'm like, please just tell me. I'm not going to be offended. You can't hurt my feelings. My problem player is always wanting a new game. He bores easily. Oh man. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I guess that can happen. Man, well, I'm afraid that I don't. I wouldn't be able to entertain him, but maybe sometime, Scott. Maybe he's interested, man. We could do some digital games if he's looking for to scratch that itch at a different place. Send him to the Discord.
It doesn't just hurt the integrity of that particular review, but every review that critic is given should now be called into question. But I can only say all this for myself. If another critic is being paid to do a review and they don't disclose that, well, then that can be a pretty serious problem, and customers need to use their best judgment when they're watching a review video. Now, sponsored reviews are different than ad sponsorships. This video was sponsored.
I just want to say real quick on still on this subject is that there are I hear from I mentioned this at the beginning of the of the stream, but there are other creators, some that I very much like, who don't feel this way. And who feel differently about this stuff, and they think, hey, it's really hard to make money doing this tabletop thing in general, and they're absolutely right. By the way, if you if you want to support the channel, become a channel member. It's the best way to support the channel and help me be able to make reviews and cover other things like that. And you can start for a dollar a month. But having things like that are, I think, how you kind of make this work. But some creators will argue that it's hard to make money, and again, these are people I like. Some of them I know personally, have hung out with a little bit. I know we're not like close friends, but I know them, and they would say like, yeah, you got to get money where you can get money. I mean, they won't say it like that, but that is kind of the idea. And it's like, yeah, a paid review or what have you. I've had companies ask me about that. Oh, do you do paid reviews and at Gen Con and what have you? And I'm like, no, yeah, I'll never do anything like that, by the way. But there is a question of like, well, how can I work something like that? How do I make this? Because eventually, you got to monetize. You got to figure out how you're going to make money, and it's a problem and something I've thought about. I'm not really uber concerned with it, but one of the ways I've thought about is like maybe after I've done a review, maybe then I could do a how-to video as far as how to play. Because I noticed that in a lot of review videos, they actually pseudo explain like how the game is played. And I found that incongruous. It doesn't need to be in there, and it's annoying for me when I want to review and they're explaining me how to play the game in a way that like it's educational, and it's like, no, I just really want the review. You don't need to tell me how the game is played except for broad strokes. And so it's like, well, maybe I could do, because I like doing educational type videos or informative type ones, and I think I could do a really good job with that. And there are other things like, I wonder what I could do, but in general, yeah, it does end up in some kind of odd space. I think one of the things I will eventually do, and let me catch up actually here on chat. Tell them the next game is hide and seek and then run away. There you go. Oh man, it could be exhausting. Oh, that's rough. Okay. um, yeah, one of the things just like most other YouTube, I feel like making a product of some sort that would be connected to the channel, such as t-shirts or what have you, but maybe even games or what have you, maybe coming up with adventures that are system agnostic. And then maybe if you're a channel member, you get it for free. And so it encourages people to become channel members or Patreons or, patrons or whatever through Patreon. Something like that, I can see. But yeah, the actual just like paying for the ad. The problem is that like a lot of companies, they know what they're doing. Not all of them. A lot of actually, and honestly, in the TTRPG space, most of the companies 99%, maybe 95% of the companies I've dealt with are all in the up and up. And it is in digital games, it's not the case. Digital games, which I have far more experience in, that is not at all the case. It's pay to play. That's why they won't give anybody review codes unless they know you're going to say good things. And there's so many systems and companies that are supposed to be. There are whole companies that are supposed to be like advertisement companies that you can pay someone to advertise your product. And by the way, if you're a creator, I have never found one of those that's good. I'm sure one exists. I'm sure there's a unicorn out there, but I've never found one that actually has your interest at heart and is going to take care of your product like the way you would. I think you should hire somebody or don't even have anything and just like work with people individually. Um, my personal opinion, based on a fair amount of experience in both digital and tabletop, but what you'll find is that there's in the digital space it's common for them to like, oh, cover this and we'll pay you per view or what have you, and stuff like that. I don't interact with any. I don't engage with any of that on my digital channel. I don't want anything to do with it, but it does exist. It's not really as much, at least currently. Not that we shouldn't keep an eye out, but it's not currently a problem like it is in that other space.
Now, sponsored reviews are different than ad sponsorships. This video was sponsored by Incogni for a 60-second ad. For most YouTubers, sponsorships make far more money than what the YouTube views are going to generate. And the reason that I chose Incogni for this video is 1, I legitimately do like their product, but 2, it is not the subject of this video. If I said I was going to do a review video for, let's say, Chaosium's new Cthulhu by Gaslight, a book that I've been looking forward to for a very long time, and then I had this video brought to you by Chaosium as the ad spot, well, that can make it a pretty difficult to believe that the review is truly an unbiased review if the publisher is also sponsoring the review video. I mean, if you're watching a review for, say, the new Toyota Camry.
I think that some of this, unfortunately, comes down to trust. And the truth is that there will be creators, and there's a ton of them, that will do shady things and will not have their viewers' best interest at heart and will sell out or whatever. And there are some group of people that even when a creator does that, will not believe that creator is using them or whatever. It's basically falling like some amount of people will fall for scams, and unfortunately that's just the truth. But I don't know that there's a great solution other than you have to, like, it's a trust thing and you have to use your best judgment. It's one of the reasons why I take certain things. So as a YouTuber, as a creator, again, I've been doing this for longer than I've been doing the tabletop. My core, and this, I could be wrong, right? But I think my perspective is that like trust is the foundation. And so I try to always give on both my channels, the most accurate information. If I'm wrong, I make sure that I come out and say that I'm wrong, and which is not the best thing to do, by the way, as far as like from promotion. You're supposed to just ignore the things you mess up. But I want to come out and say it and like, hey, I got this wrong or what have you, because trust is the currency I feel like I deal with. And whenever you do ads and stuff like that and sponsorships or whatever, or really anything you're making money, you're kind of, the trust is the currency you're using, right? If I tell you, hey guys, I'm selling dice, right? I'm making homebrew tabletop themed dice. They've got a mimic on the 20 or something. You're trusting that those are good products. If you get them and they're like the cheapest, most garbage dice ever, like, okay, if I told you that, it's fine. But if I didn't, and they're really expensive, like you're going to lose a lot of trust with me. And so it's a currency that in some ways you spend. Although if you always fulfill on your promise, I don't know that you actually spend it. Because if I tell you, hey, these are really high quality products, Dwarven Forge does not do any sponsorships, by the way, as far as I know. But Dwarven Forge is an incredibly amazing product. And if I were to tell you that and you bought Dwarven Forge, you would be like, holy crap, this is amazing product. These are really good. This is exactly what I was promised. And so no currency is like spent there. Sometimes people have different experiences than you would hope they would have in some of these areas, like sure, and so that can be a problem. But for me, it's like trust is a currency that I'm trying to build up, so that one day when I can actually get like nice dice made or something, for example, that you guys will know that it's going to be a good, high quality product. You can trust me. And then again, I'm not expending that trust and I'm never breaking it. And I think that that is, yeah, Scott, you need to have a good BS meter. Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, not everybody, a lot of people, get really attached to their favorite creator or their favorite game system. Just today, actually, I had someone, or maybe it was yesterday, someone on my video on D&D. I did one of like why you shouldn't quit D&D, and then why you should quit D&D. And if you actually click on the video, I'm you'll get a different thumbnail. I can only say so much on a thumbnail, and I did the best I could, but somebody didn't look at anything besides the thumbnail, assume the worst, and then wrote me kind of a mean comment, or they were angry. That's fine. It's going to happen at some point or whatever. But some people that's how tribal they are, that they thought I would dare to insult Dungeons and Dragons. Therefore, they unsubscribed from the channel and like told YouTube to mute it or whatever. And that's how they felt because of a thumbnail without actually, clicking on the video and understanding what my points were and where I'm coming from and what have you. That's fine. First off, like it's no big deal. It's going to happen. I realized that was going to happen. But when you attach yourself that strongly to a thing, and then it's like anybody who says anything, getting people to fall for scams, unfortunately, is not that hard. Getting people to understand that they fell for a scam is incredibly difficult. And we see this with, political stuff, seriously, but, Scott, yeah, like I don't really blame him. I should have had a better thumbnail. First off, I could have done something better. I did the best I could. I could have done better. That's fine. And the other thing is like, yeah, the other part of that is, they're probably not going to like my channel if they're very easily offended because I criticize the things that I love. And I've tried to make that very clear. All my GURPS videos somehow worked out well. And I think that one of the reasons that the GURPS videos worked out so well is because, well, first of all, people clicked on the video and actually watched it. And so they saw that like, oh no, I've been playing GURPS for like decades and it's my favorite system. And yeah, I have criticisms of it. And it's like, okay, well, you're not from the outside criticizing, you're from the inside. And I feel the same way about D&D. Like I'm still on the inside. There's some people that might like to put me on the outside because they don't like what I have to say, but I am on the inside of that. And I think that really, the tabletop in general. So yeah, it's just kind of a hard thing where there's unfortunately going to be some amount of people that are going to fall for this stuff. And I don't know that there is a hard and fast rule for like what a creator should and shouldn't do and what is crossing the line and when it's not. And my wife tells me I'm a paladin who thinks he's a rogue. And I certainly think I'm a rogue. But when I see creators, abusing their audience and tricking their audience, like as someone who does YouTube, oh man, blood pressure goes up. I need to like calm myself down or whatever, unrationally, or irrationally so. And one of the things with these sponsored videos and stuff like that, he's talking about a Toyota Camry. The problem with YouTube in general with these sponsored ads and stuff like that, YouTube creators, and I'm kind of giving you guys a little bit inside of baseball, I think is what people say. I don't know anything about baseball, but that's an expression that we use in the US to mean like I'm telling you a little bit behind the scenes here. But the way YouTube works is YouTubers are incredibly cheap for ad companies. Quote unquote influencers, as they call us, are incredibly cheap. And even though you'll make more money from this than you will from YouTube, you're still very cheap for the advertiser. And so that's why they try to do this. And then the other thing is like there's most things that YouTubers are talking about in their videos, the sponsored ads, are scams. Most of it they're scams. I mean, we saw it most recently with oh man, I can't even remember. There's like 3 or 4. So there's like the titles, right? You could buy a title and technically, and they would say you're a lord based in in Scotland, and like Scotland's like no, you're not. No, literally that's not a thing. This is just a scam. Before that, there was another one. I mean, NordVPN has been hacked before, and all their customers and like it lasted for months and months. Not a safe company, and the thing is, the way it's a scam because they're claiming to protect your privacy and they're not. And there's a lot of things that are coming out that are claiming to protect your privacy that don't actually. I know a little bit about this stuff because I'm into that sort of thing from a digital perspective. I think everybody should have a right to privacy, and I know a little bit about this stuff, and they don't do the thing they fulfill. Now, Critical Role gets sponsored all the time by NordVPN. I don't think that anybody over at Critical Role has any idea, just like the average person has no idea, that NordVPN is probably not the best and safest. It's certainly not the best VPN to be using and not the one that's going to be the safest. However, so I don't really blame them per se. But at the same time, if you're going to accept a sponsorship, because I've been offered those, you have to do enough research about the company to know that it's not a scam for your audience, and people don't do it. The most recent one is what was it? Some like web hook or whatever you could add on that was like stealing money from creators, not their customers. So it was a little bit better, but it was still bad. GDS says I was just thinking one of the issues in Camry versus TTRPGs is that only one of those things are purchasable to children who are maybe more impressionable. Do you think that is relevant or no? Honey, that's what it is. Okay, I was a little bit confused. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay, thank you. You know, it being purchasable by children is like worse. Yeah. Again, I see this very much in the digital game space, but I don't think that a lot of these things are just a matter of degrees. And so, for me, it's past the point where it shouldn't exist. Even the stuff that's not that bad is still past the point where it shouldn't really exist for me. And so it's like, well, after that point, like, if you have to choose between varying degrees of bad, sure, choose the lesser of two evils. But should we really have to choose, or can we get rid of both of them? And that's kind of how I feel. And not that there aren't, companies that could, that could pay creators and sponsor them. I think it's great whenever I see creators being sponsored by other smaller TTRPG companies, because that makes sense to me. And because, again, in the TTRPG space, the companies I see doing sponsorships are good companies and they're acting ethically. And so I'm like all for that. Incogni here, just based on what I know about YouTube, and I don't think that this is, Seth's fault, right? Like he probably doesn't know better, but I'm incredibly skeptical about Incogni, not because I know anything about them. Okay, maybe Seth has done all of his homework, but most of these companies claim to do something they don't actually do. And the way, the claiming that we're gonna I don't know what Incogni even does, but there are companies that claim like, oh, we're gonna remove your private information from these companies. No, no. Those companies, whenever they are designed to make it where it's impossible to do that. And they have so many smaller companies and they all trade data and they update that stuff constantly. So you delete it from one company, like, oh yeah, we illegally have to delete that. Okay. They can immediately get it from a third party again and then have it. And that's exactly what they do. And so there are some companies that'll say, oh no, we'll keep doing that. And really, it's like, okay, yeah, it's going to take you months to be able to get them to delete one thing, or maybe even if it's once a month, they're going to get your data back in 24 hours. So it's because it's in multiple locations and it's impossible to get them all to delete it at once. Maybe they can do something, but most likely they're doing nothing. And just what I know about sponsorships for YouTubers is that most of them there are enough of them that I don't want to even touch the space. Sorry, I digress. We're getting a little bit far off here, but I just wanted to talk about that. I'm very passionate about it, in case you couldn't tell.
And it said sponsored by Toyota in the bottom corner. You would say the same thing about that, right? So as a reviewer, I have to be aware of who is sponsoring which video that I'm going to be putting that sponsorship on. And as a side note, Chaosium has never once sponsored me. I've even talked with them about this, and they were the first to mention that, sponsoring a reviewer was kind of a bad look for everyone involved. And I really do appreciate them saying that and bringing that up with me, because, it saves us both an uncomfortable talk if they were to offer that later on, because, we both know where each other stand on that. In fact, I bought this book with my own money. They did not even offer me a discount.
Again, he's talking about this, and I just don't think this is something that would reasonably influence anybody, and I feel pretty strongly about that.
Discount to buy this thing, even though that I've been talking about it for years and I talk about their products all the time. I still had to pay full price for this, so that is not going to bias my review at all. I promise. Now I'm joking here. I don't need people going out there that, Seth is going to punish you if you don't give him discounts. It was a joke, guys. Another source of reviewer income is affiliate links. Now, full disclosure, any link that I ever give to Amazon or DriveThruRPG or Humble Bundle, that is an affiliate link. And I make a small royalty not only from people buying the product that I put a link to, but any other products that they might add to the cart while they're there. Now, that is great. And the way that I see it is I was going to be putting up a link to DriveThruRPG or Amazon anyway, so I might as well make an affiliate link because I was going to be putting a link there one way or the other. In addition to the revenue that generates, I get to see how many people are buying something that I review, providing they're actually using the links that I provided, of course. But I found that stuff that I even give a negative review for, those seem to sell just as well as the different things that I put links to that I give glowing reviews for. So that was a pretty big surprise to me. Now after that, the other ways that reviewers make money is through...
That's interesting. This is something he doesn't have a problem with. I don't really feel strongly about this, but I know that there are so when you go onto YouTube and you search for stuff that I might want to buy for a YouTube channel, such as cameras, microphones, what have you, and you see this also with websites, none of the reviews will be bad. They're just giving you a review of products, and oftentimes they're really terrible reviews in that they're not informative. And the reason they do that is because they don't care what you buy as long as you buy something and you use their affiliate link. And so that's the game they're in. And a lot of them are written by, somebody getting paid to write a review for like as a third party who's never done anything with that product or whatever, and they're basically telling you the specs for the product in a flowery way that you could read on the back of the box, and they're not actually giving you any information. And so and that's how they make money. And so it's interesting that this wouldn't bother him. I don't think he probably, again, knows. It's not like he's doing something that's disingenuous, but the fact that those things exist kind of cause a problem, right? Like where I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with putting the affiliate links. I try to put links. None of them are ever affiliate links, by the way. I just don't want to do that. But I try to put links so that my viewers can easily go to the website and like find the product for the thing that I'm reviewing, but those are never affiliate links, just as an FYI. And I think I've mentioned that, but it's not really something I'm interested in because I know that sort of thing exists.
Merchandise, such as t-shirts or special dice or other swag, or, selling their own RPGs or books or other items, such as my own novels. That's a great way to support your favorite channel, as well as community sponsorships like Patreon or paid memberships to channels, supporting the reviewer directly. And while I'm at it, a huge thank you to all of my patrons out there.
This is where I would like to see most creators making a living, is from ads that they don't control and from like sponsorships, Patreon channel members and what have you. Patreon gives you you end up with like 90% I think of the revenue, whereas like YouTube takes 25, so you end up with 75%. I don't mind. So it's interesting that as someone who's worked in business historically, when you have a good partnership and it's working out for both parties, and it's a business to business relationship, when it's working out well, you don't need to take, you don't even want to take money from the other party if it's fair. If it's a fair deal, it's working for everybody. And I feel like my 75% cut for YouTube is, generally speaking, fair. Are there issues? Yeah, because my revenue is controlled through YouTube, so having it on Patreon and other places is good. Having other connection to the people who don't just like me for purely YouTube, but just because what I do in general, and if I were to do the same thing on a different platform, would be equally happy to follow me. That's important. I do think that's good, having one company and only one source. So I do like having it in different places. But at the same time, I've had friends that are like, oh, why don't you just try to push everybody towards Patreon? And I kind of feel like, what, this seems like a fair deal to me. And so I'm kind of okay with it, if that makes sense.
Not thank you guys enough. But the reason that I bring up reviewer income up is customers should consider if the reviewer is getting paid in exchange for a positive review, or if they're giving positive reviews in order, in exchange of getting more and more free product, because maybe they're not going to be getting any more free product.
I just would love one example of this, and not to like harp on this, but I would just like one example where someone's been given so much free product that it biased their review. I think this is more for those group of people who don't normally do reviews and might be given some cool swag, right? Like you send somebody a care package of like all of the things that, and the other part of this is this actually happened recently, or relatively recently. It was months ago. Bob Worldbuilder did some video where he was comparing Rangers, and he didn't have the books for um, Tales of the Valiant. He didn't have the books for Tales of the Valiant. And so he was like, yeah, so I can't review it. And I was like, oh God, someone should get him those books for Tales of the Valiant. Like, and I also know that they did. I can tell you for a fact that they did, because I emailed them and was like, hey, World Builder doesn't have your books. FYI, you should, and that's the kind of thing where it's not going to influence Bob. He's not going to play Tales of the Valiant, but he's doing a video, and so I just don't know that this is a real problem. So interesting or whatever, but I just would like to see one instance where this was a real thing with a professional YouTuber.
If they're known to keep giving that publisher, poor reviews, maybe that is slanting their opinion. However, I will say that this is an accusation.
An important note for what I do, guys, and I tell companies this, and I tell them, like, when it comes up, or if I remember to, I've probably told like 1/10 of the companies that I've dealt with, and eventually I'll have my review policies on my I have like a kind of a link tree website, just nightharrow.com, with links to all my stuff, and eventually I'll put it there. It's a technical issue, and I got to get my web person to do it, and I actually have to write it up myself, which is going to take me a while. But I just don't review games I don't like, and I've said that on the channel on many of the reviews. I might not say it on all of them, just because it's boring and not important to the video that they're watching. So you lose people. But I don't do reviews on products I don't like. So if I don't like it, I just won't talk about it. And I have also had instances where at Gen Con where someone's handing me a product, and they want to hand me a product, or like start to hand it to me, and then they hold on to it. Literally had this happen. And they're like, they'll be like, you'll promise me you'll do a review on it, or what? I'll give you a book if you promise me you'll do a review on it. And I will tell them, first off, like, I don't want to do business like that at all. Like, I want to review your product. I want to review it. If I don't like it, the life is too short, and there are too many great, amazing games out there that I will like, that I'm just not going to spend the time to tell people about a product I don't like. It's just not worth it to me. And I tell them that, like, hey, I'm just not going to, I can't promise you I'll review it, because if I don't like it, I'm just not going to review it. So all my channels, all my reviews should, generally speaking, be positive. Now, that was an issue for me with something like Start Here, because there's some things I really liked, but also I don't know if I want to recommend that to most people, and I don't, and I didn't. And it's like a fine line but I do think there's something of value, and there is a reason why people would want to buy that product. And it could be very helpful for them, and it could be a good place for them to start, and what have you. Sure. But generally speaking, only a couple of times. Most of the time, like he mentioned, with when he did, handed out review copies of novels, trying to get people to review them, they got like 25% back or whatever. I think it's the same problem, where it's like, hey, just promise me you'll actually do a review on it. Whether it's actually handing you a book or sending you a digital copy. And not everybody does that. I don't mind that, like, again, with the caveat that I will tell them. I also had a company, one company, they just didn't, they had one of their products left, and they didn't want to have to pack it up. and they go, hey, I'll give you this if you promise me you'll do a review on it. And I was like, I can't promise that. I've got a ton of products. And they were like, here, just take it. They'll try to get you to commit to something, because there's most people don't actually review the products, which I understand. That's a problem for them. And it was just kind of funny, though, that like they immediately folded when I was like, I can't promise that. They're like, all right, just take it. I just don't want I don't want to have to pack it up. They didn't say that, but that's 100% what it was.
That does get thrown out a whole hell of a lot. Just about any game that I've talked very highly about, someone has accused me of being a paid shill, simply because they can't imagine that I would like that game or that product, and not, just love or hate whatever it is they love or hate. And that is exhausting how often that happens. But that's the world of RPG.
This kind of thing, not to, we should let this run a little bit, but this happens all the time. There's a handful of things that I get comments on, and that people think. It's kind of like people thinking that linking videos in Discord does anything. People who don't know think that that's true, and it's just like, no, it's objectively not true. It's not going to do anything. And there are a lot of things that this kind of reminds you of the exact same thing.
RPG reviews and reviewers. And customers need to not just consider what critics are saying about a game or a product, but how thoroughly they use that product themselves, if they even used it at all, and what that critic's personal game preferences are, and if any compensation was involved at all in this. Now, for my own review policy, I have mentioned it here and there in various videos, but I've never just laid it all out in any official capacity. I do played reviews, meaning that I have personally played the adventure or the particular game enough to feel that I have a solid understanding and opinion of it. And in most cases, this usually means that I'm going to be the one running it. Now, my group is a normal group. We've been playing together for years, and I'm not going to run them through a game that I don't believe is going to be a good match for us. I'm going to run what I see as having the most fun with. If I don't see that it's a good fit or matches our taste or whatever mood we're currently in to play, I am not going to run it, and therefore it doesn't get a review. And every publisher, big or small, who offers to send me a review copy gets the same disclaimer before I accept anything from them.
This goes back to the problem. It's really hard to do played reviews, and this is understandable. That you're actually playing it. You got to get something that your table's gonna like and what have you. I have a little bit wider base that I can cajole people to allow me to play test on them.
To put it simply, we play what we enjoy and I review what we play. And no one who isn't at my table gets any say at all in what it is that we're going to play. My first priority is to my players. That also means that my reviews do lean towards being positive. Why? Because if I ran it, that means I've already vetted it as something that I thought we were going to enjoy playing. Now, I have been
Another one of those things that people who don't do YouTube think is that a lot of people think that anytime someone says anything negative, that it's rage bait. And I have seen so many videos that understandably, in some cases, people think are rage bait, are not. There are very few creators that actually do that. And I think if you're going to do that successfully, you got to go all in. Discourse, she does a lot of stuff like that. It's not for me. I want to like a lot of her content, and I feel it's like a lot of it's like clickbait for me or whatever, and it always seems to pretend to be negative, even if it's not always negative, and I just don't like that, so I don't unfortunately I don't click on it anymore. I think that you can be successful doing that. I think that's a small percentage of people, and I don't think it's most folks, and I think that most of the people, yeah. It's a lot smaller, and I've seen people actually have more a case where they actually have genuine feelings about things, and maybe they're off base, and it's not what maybe we would consider accurate or realistic or whatever their feelings. I mean, you can't invalidate someone's feelings, right? But you're like, yeah, this seems kind of off base, but it is really that they truly believe that, and I've seen this again with digital games where someone is like, this game sucks and these developers don't care and they don't produce enough content. And I'm like, dude, how long have you been covering digital games? Because this company is great. They put out a lot of, it's like the exact opposite. But I don't think that person was trying to rage bait. They just genuinely felt that way for whatever reason. And I see too many times where people try to discount. It's an easy way to just be like, oh, you're just trying to rage bait. And it's a way of discounting and not having to deal with the validity of the criticism that is being leveled against something you might like.
Been wrong before and run a few lemons from time to time, but most of the time we have a great experience with whatever it is that we're playing, which means most of my reviews, as a result of me vetting them before I ran them, are going to be pretty favorable.
Yeah.
The next consideration is time. If I received or bought an adventure that I can work into whatever our current campaign is, then great. I'll probably work that in as soon as I can, but more sooner than if it was something completely outside what our current campaign is. Otherwise, it's going to have to wait until we're finished playing whatever game or campaign it is that we're playing. For example, our current Secrets of the Ancients campaign has been going on for 1.5 years now. I hope to have this finished up in the next month or two, but until we are done with this, all of our primary game days are going to be dedicated to this campaign. And while I'm on it, you should totally check out my ongoing campaign diary review for it. It's both a comprehensive chapter-by-chapter review and
I will say I like
freaking hilarious.
I like Seth
repeat from earlier,
more after watching this video for sure.
Copies, but those in no way guarantee a positive review, and depending on our tastes and our play schedule, I can't promise that review, if there is one, being prompt or even at all. Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades, a game that I loved once we started playing it, had to wait 2 years before I even opened the book to decide if we were going to play it.
On the topic, and I should really let this play. I got some. I got another stream on the digital channel at 6 here on the hour. But I tried to get a creator friend of mine who made a product to sign his product that he like gave away, and I haven't reviewed it on the channel or anything. And he didn't friggin' sign it. If you want to talk about like, here's a way to influence, like, here's the thing, I think it's cool that you made a product, man. Can you sign it? I like set it on the table and like put a pin. He never friggin' signed it. I'm still mad about it.
Or not. Now, any publishers out there wishing to send me review copies, then great. I love review copies. And this includes community content creators out there like Miskatonic Repository or the Traveler's Aid Society. I am open to those. But first, look at what type of games it is that I play and I review. Because I get countless requests from people that are making 5e content, and I have to turn all of that down because 5e isn't anything that I'm interested in playing. There's a lot of great stuff and a lot of great people that are making it out there, but that game is simply not my jam, so sorry. And if what you have looks like something that I would enjoy to play, then definitely pitch it to me. Don't just send me a message saying that you've made a game and then ask me if I'll review this game without telling me anything about it. Tell me about this game or this adventure that you have. Sell me on it. Tell me why it is that this is something that I absolutely want to play next before all the other cool games that I've got in queue waiting to be played.
Absolutely. I just want to, yes, do this.
And bonus points if you can do that in just 1 or 2 paragraphs. If you see me this big wall of text, my ADHD kicks in and then I lose interest before you get to the point of whatever it was you were going to say. And whatever you do, don't just send me a PDF or a download link without asking me or even pitching it all to me. I get these things all the time being emailed to me and I don't open them because I wasn't able to give my disclaimer.
I will, yeah, I would say a little bit, not that it really matters, right? 'Cause the chances of a viewer, someone who might send me a product are pretty small that are watching. But I would say, I want them to send me a digital copy or a link to the digital copy so that I can put it in my queue to like look at and probably review or whatever. But if I have it beforehand, the other thing is sending, if there's any creators out there, sending, if you're going to do that, also like links to assets, to like press assets. So for those who aren't familiar, you might want, I want to do a thumbnail. And if I have a cutout of some of your characters that are in the art, like are in the book, like what I've done with my Dragonbane, I had to go through and like stencil out those characters, right? And that just takes extra time. So if you give me art for your book, and this is standard practice, guys, in a lot of industries, if you have access to the quote unquote press kit, it's very helpful for creators. And having like you don't need to send them like a zip file, but like, cause also that's sketchy, but like sending them a link or what have you, or sending, I like that. And so that way I have access to it whenever I need it. So I don't have to email the person back and be like, okay, I would like to begin taking a look at this thing and see if it's going to be something that I'm interested in or how it would fit in my content schedule and what have you. Having it already there and not having to ask for that stuff is hugely helpful no matter what kind of business. If you're sending out marketing info, it's hugely helpful.
That me accepting a review copy doesn't guarantee a prompt review or even a review at all, so I don't even open those. Trust me, I'm an author myself, and I completely understand the value of getting reviews and getting your name out there, and just how frustrating it is trying to find somebody out there that can.
I might need to check out Seth's books. I didn't know.
Review whatever it is that you have. And also, in all honesty, I find it difficult to even call myself a reviewer. I really kind of fought being called a reviewer for a long time, mostly because I'm not seeking out games in order to review them. I'm looking for games in order to play them and enjoy running for my friends. I'm just simply a normal game master. It just so happens that I make review videos about whatever it is that we're playing, but I'm not looking to play games just so I can review them. But I have had to accept that yes, I definitely am an RPG reviewer, just not a conventional RPG reviewer, and I am perfectly fine being unconventional. Again, thank you to Incognate for sponsoring.
Cool. Yeah. That's, I guess, where we differ because I that's a core thing. One of the core things that I do here on the channel, that I feel like I am a TTRPG reviewer and board games and war games and what have you. So yeah, well, guys, this is, it's been a lot of fun actually hanging out and chatting. GDS, Scott, I appreciate, Lyriel, appreciate you guys dropping in and dropping comments. And those of you who didn't feel comfortable or didn't want to drop a comment, thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully we'll get some really good conversation and get to talk a lot more on Thursday whenever we cover strength and TTRPGs. I done a lot of research for that and what have you, probably more than it will warrant for the audience will get. But I really enjoy these, and it's maybe we can continue to do stuff like this a little bit moving forward. I always love having the conversations and chatting with folks. Again, I do a lot of live streams on the digital channel, so it's something that I enjoy, even though this is like the second one. And GDS was kind enough to be my first person who joined me on a live stream. So I've got some other people in the industry that I also know would be some of them very interested. Some of them I think would do it regardless, who would join me on the channel, and we could kind of talk more about TTRPGs and stuff like that. I would love for my setup to be a lot better and more professional. I'm trying to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good in that manner. So we'll try to keep some going on. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching. Thanks, Scott. It was a great time. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We'll call it here for today, guys, and hopefully we'll see you Thursday, or we'll see you after the fact if you're watching this at your leisure. All right, guys, have a good evening.